Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Goeienaand, Samabona, Molo, Kunjani. In any language, that's the only language I know. But Assalamu alaikum, welcome to AccidentalMuslims.com. Once again, we're honored and privileged that you guys can tune in and watch us live on Facebook, Instagram. So tonight, alhamdulillah, we have Mr. Saliegh Salaam from the Old Mutual, one of the lead investment managers at Old Mutual Sharia. Saliegh, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to AccidentalMuslims.com.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and it's great to be at Accidental Muslims.
Alhamdulillah, I think what's lovely about tonight's episode, alhamdulillah, I think has set the bar in terms of interaction on social media from our viewers and our followers. The amount of questions that flowed in from the few days of advertising that you were going to be a guest on our show, we've got some fantastic questions, and we hope to put it to you, and we hope you can do justice to our listeners in terms of the answers. There's definitely a yearning to understand Sharia and Sharia compliance. So maybe from that point, just take us through, what is Sharia compliant? What does it mean?
At a high level, Sharia compliant investing or Sharia compliant products are essentially products that comply with Islamic law. More specifically, it essentially means that these products adhere to a certain set of standards as verified and certified by a Sharia board within the context of a particular geographical jurisdiction. So for example, in South Africa, all funds or products that purport to be Sharia compliant have got to adhere to a set of standards, and these standards are called the OFI standards, Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. And this essentially represents the consensus of the leading experts in the field of Islamic commercial law globally, who are over a period of 20 or so years codified an evolving set of standards to govern Islamic financial products.
Saliegh, like I said, you obviously affiliated to Old Mutual Fund. Certainly you have your own sort of methodology in the way you guys choose your stocks, your own sort of recipe, as you mentioned earlier. Maybe enlighten our viewers and take us through that.
So our investment philosophy or investment approach, or more specifically for the benefit of our audience, our recipe really consists of three key ingredients. The first one is we want to buy very, very attractively valued assets, very attractively valued shares. Now, our community has a huge love affair with property. So let's use a property example. Let's imagine that a property, an independent assessment of the property says that the property is worth 5 million rand. But for some other reason, this property is selling at 2 million rand. And after you've got it in your uncle and your aunt in the building trade to come and do an evaluation of the house, who says, actually there's nothing wrong with this house, it just needs a little bit of fixing up, but it's really worth much more. This 2 million rand is a real bargain. And you've done your homework, you determine that actually it really is a bargain at 2 million rand. You buy it at 2, but it's worth 5 million rand. To replace that building in that same area is going to cost you 5 million rand. So we spend a huge amount of time trying to find those kind of bargains, those disconnects between value and price. The second thing we look for is we want to try and find those assets where other savvy investors have also started to recognize that there's potential. So coming back to our property area, if we had to see other savvy investors like, let's say, Accidental or others come along and say, well, they start developing in areas nearby, we see, well, actually the smart money is also going to that area. That 2 million rand house, actually, there's potential in it because other smart money is coming in. So how we look at that is we look at what we call the sentiment around that particular area. But there's a third ingredient that we look at. We said the first one was valuation. how attractively valued that asset is. The second one is, what is the sentiment or feeling towards this asset? The third crucial ingredient is we try and look at what is the risk associated with this asset. Okay? It is absolutely critical to understand what that risk is. Because the first rule of investing is don't lose your capital. Preserve your capital. And how you do that is not only by buying smartly, not only by looking at what the smart money is doing, but also equally trying to understand what is the risk inherent in that project. So, instead of just getting your uncle and your aunt in the building trade to come and do an assessment, if you got a structural engineer in there, and you got a QS in there, okay, to come and do a detailed assessment of this property, and they said there's absolutely nothing wrong with this property. There's, don't be scared of that footstewards clause. There's really nothing wrong. It just needs a bit of paint and TLC, and then you're sorted. Then you've managed your risk, right? So that's what we do. Valuation, sentiment, and managing risk. That's the key elements of our investment recipe or philosophy.
No, that's fascinating. Alhamdulillah. One question which came up quite a few times through our emails and our social media was also about, and I'm going to refer to one of our listeners, Shafiq in Cape Town. He's interested in knowing how do we truly harness zakah and awqaf via Islamic finance to eradicate poverty. What's your thoughts on that?
Alhamdulillah, I've been very, very fortunate to kind of travel to different parts of the world, and sort of a bit of a amateur student of history. And if you look at when the Islamic community was at its strongest, was basically when our system of awqafs, right, these charitable trusts and endowments were very, very well supported, very, very well funded. We just came back from Turkey now. Did you know that at a certain point in time, the Turks had a waqf and an awqaf to look after street cats? Street cats. To feed street cats. There was so much wealth around that they could create a trust to feed street cats. Now, we need, as a community, we need to use our creative genius to create products and investment vehicles in a way that is consistent with our ethos and our value system to support the awqaf, to support our zakah institutions, to ultimately eradicate poverty. So absolutely, we strongly support that idea.
I think we have something in common. I'm also an amateur history follower. So it's something which I think is quite relevant today, especially in the times where Islam and anything to do with Islam is under attack and have this negative sort of portrayal of Islam. Sharia, finance, awqaf, zakah, these are elements which can break down those barriers of negativity, so to speak. And my question really to you is, how can we make these Sharia investments more mainstream for Muslims and non-Muslims perhaps?
That's a brilliant question. I think, first of all, we all, myself included, we have to recognize that we are, first and foremost, ambassadors. We're ambassadors. We're ambassadors for a certain way of life. And of course, in this context, I'm also very much an ambassador for Old Mutual, right? We are ambassadors. And we have to faithfully represent, as best we can, the ethos that underlies not only, for example, what Old Mutual stands for, but also what our tradition stands for. Now, coming back to your question around how we can make these products more mainstream. As an industry, we need to do a lot more in terms of educating our youth, educating our vast sort of community of employed people at various companies who have pension funds invested in various retirement saving vehicles, to make the choice to select a Sharia compliant investment. We have to engage with our scholars, our alims, to inform our community of the great virtue of building wealth in a way that is consistent with our Islamic ethos. So that we're not only focused on the importance of eating halal food, but we are equally focused on consuming halal Islamic or halal investment and financial product, whether that be a banking deposit, whether that be a policy for your kids' education, or whether that be saving towards Hajj, but using the products that are available to help us to achieve our financial goals.
Just the second part of what I asked you was the non-Muslim involvement in Sharia products. Maybe share with the listeners the percentage and the involvement and perhaps your understanding of why they choose Sharia.
By our estimates at Old Mutual Investment Group, we estimate that around close to 20% of our almost 4 billion rand worth of assets is invested by people of other faiths. That's quite a significant portion of assets, right? I mean, 20% of 4 billion, we're talking about 800 million, right? That's a lot of money. Now, why have they invested in it? There are two reasons in our experience, and we're not necessarily saying that that's exhaustive, but two reasons in our experience. The first one is that historically, Sharia compliant products have behaved in a way that is almost counter-cyclical to traditional investments, so it's a very good diversifying investment. Secondly, they have historically given very, very good returns. And thirdly, there is a growing movement globally amongst people of every background and faith to consume ethical products, to conduct business and social interactions and corporate transactions in a way that is ethical, in a way that is responsible. This growing movement is called environmental, social, and governance investing. And I believe that if we can find the intersection between Sharia standards and ESG standards, that we can make our products far more mainstream. And in fact, in our global Islamic portfolio, we are one of the few portfolios in the world that actually has that intersection between environmental and social governance principles and investing with Sharia principles. They both come together in our global Islamic portfolio.
I just want to move to a question we got via WhatsApp on the social media. It's from Aziza in Sydney. She asks, with Islamophobia currently on the rise and around, are Sharia products being given sufficient support by the regulatory authorities? Or are we starting to see some contention towards Sharia products globally?
I can definitely speak for the South African market. A few years ago, our former Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, indicated that the development of Islamic finance, certainly within South Africa, was one of the developmental sort of goals of the finance ministry. And certainly there have been significant attempts from a regulatory perspective to create the necessary space for Islamic financial products to exist side by side with conventional products in a way that didn't prejudice Islamic financial product, but neither prejudiced conventional product. So definitely there is a support for it within the South African environment. Furthermore, globally, we've also seen a number of jurisdictions, be it the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, Luxembourg, and so on, that have created lots of judicial and regulatory flexibility for the growth of Islamic finance. Because Muslims within their respective communities tend to be in the upper middle to upper income groups. And there's also a recognition that there's obviously a huge amount of wealth within the Middle East, and how you can tap that wealth is to create vehicles and regulatory frameworks that allows those investors to invest in those particular jurisdictions.
It's interesting, just something that's popped into my mind while I was talking to you. We talk about how do we make Sharia products mainstream, or somehow find that intersection like you mentioned. Do you, in particular in the Sharia environment, investment environment, is Sharia seen as the alternative still, as the second product, the alternative by the community that wants to invest, or how do you see it from an investment lead perspective?
Our community historically has been very entrepreneurial. So our parents, our grandparents, and so on, and great grandparents, they came here with nothing, right? So to survive, they needed to be entrepreneurial. They then created businesses. Over time, they started to invest in property. So their first love is investing in their business. Their second love is whatever spare money they have is to invest in property. What we're trying to get them to do is to understand that it's, you can have three loves. You can invest in your business, you can invest in property, but you can also invest in financial product that is Sharia compliant. And that's a challenge, even for those who are very, very let's call it Sharia conscious. Their first love is always their business and property, right? And what we're trying to do, as I said, we're trying to get them to understand, you can invest in your business, it's going to give you good returns, and you can invest in property, but you can also diversify and invest in financial product. For those outside of that, we are finding that an increasing amount of investors and an increasing amount of Muslim employees at a range of institutions are asking their employees for member level choice. There is the necessary regulatory frameworks that allows Muslim staff at companies to request the trustees of the respective pension funds to ask, look, I would like to be able to invest in a way that's consistent with my ethical framework. And with sufficient demand, these trustees will seriously consider, in terms of their fiduciary responsibility, the provision of those vehicles. And a huge amount of growth that we have seen over the last couple of years has come from that. So some years ago, I don't know how this guy got my number. He calls me from Armscor or Denel, and he says he's trying to put a petition together to get his fellow Muslim staff members to petition the trustees at the company to create a member level choice option for them. And I thought to myself, wow, mashallah, look at what steps this person has gone to try and create a member level choice. And even in our own experience, some years ago, let me give you a very real example. Our company, 10 years ago or so, was bought by Old Mutual, and our pension fund was still on the previous scheme, which had member level choice. The Old Mutual scheme at that stage didn't have member level choice. As an investment team, we point blank refused to move our assets from the future growth scheme to the Old Mutual scheme because they didn't have member level choice. And shortly after that, Old Mutual created that framework for member level choice. And then we'd moved our assets and put it into the Sharia compliant product. So it is possible.
No, I think it's an aspect you mentioned earlier in our audio podcast, is that activism. People need to understand, people need to take bold steps like this gentleman that phoned you out of the blue and actually want to fight for what they want, what they believe in, basically.
Yes. And even we have traditional financial institutions whose staff have requested a Sharia compliant product. Right? I'm talking about across the landscape of financial institutions in South Africa and non-financial institutions in South Africa and other companies. They have created this framework. Now Muslims need to seize the opportunity, take the step, engage with your trustees, with your principal officers. And these are reasonable people. They will create that. But they can't do so in the absence of demand.
Yeah. Just to correct you, you can have 4 loves, if I'm understanding. So there's a question from Zahira in Johannesburg. She indicates that for women running businesses from home, single moms in particular, how does one ascertain how much to invest when much goes into daily expenses? What type of advice do you have for her?
So that's a tough one. For someone who is just surviving, or who just has enough for to make ends meet, of course it's always going to be a challenge. But some level of saving is clearly better than no level of saving. And over time, through the power of compounding, you'd be surprised what a small amount of money over long periods of time, consistently invested, can actually create. And I would urge that investor to still engage in the process of investing. Because the action that is most loved by God, by Allah, is the one that is done most consistently. So if that consistency equals 250 Rand a month, then invest the 250 Rand a month. If that consistency means 500 Rand a month, then invest the 500. Do so consistently. And over time, as I said, that 500 Rand a month can grow to 5 million Rand.
Sure. So consistency is really the key. I think it's a key in any aspect of life, whether you're a father, whether you're an investor, whether you're whatever profession or trade. What you do, you need to do at your best, strive for excellence, and be consistent. I think that's something which will resonate with, definitely with our viewers out there. Just something that the viewers may not know. Earlier, Saliegh indicated
that the leader serves his team and facilitates as best he can the development and the growth of each of the team members under his, if I may use the word, care, so that they can become the best professionals in their respective areas. But also to recognize that within the context of a team, that everyone has their particular strengths. I may not necessarily be the best striker, but I may be the best goalkeeper. if we can create a team where everyone knows and understands exactly what their roles are and exactly what their strengths are, and we can nurture and develop them within their particular areas of strengths, we can then have other players who can quite easily compensate for their weaknesses. Right? So yes, the goalie is not the striker. But if the rest of the team does their job well, the goalie can relax against the goalpost and he doesn't have to do anything. Right?
I think all goalkeepers would like to do that. Sorry to interrupt, Saliegh. We just got a question that came in over the Facebook Live. And maybe you touched on it in terms of team. So tell us, maybe what does the team at Old Mutual have in terms of Sharia offerings? And that comes from Halima in Cape Town.
At Old Mutual Investment Group, or specifically Old Mutual Unit Trusts, we have, as I mentioned, around 4 billion rands worth of assets which are invested in a Sharia compliant fashion. These are the Old Mutual Al Baraka Equity Fund. This is a fund where for every 100 rand that you invest in, 100 rand is going to go into shares listed on the JSE and other global markets. Then we have the Old Mutual Al Baraka Balance Fund. What does that mean? That is essentially a product that says for every 100 rand that you have, say 60 rand is going to be invested in shares in the JSE and globally, and 40 rand is going to be invested in Sharia compliant cash investments. Then we have a third product, which is the Old Mutual Global Islamic Equity Fund, which is a Dublin or Irish listed investment vehicle. And this says for every $100 that you invest in, $100 will be invested across global markets, excluding South Africa. Now, for those investors who are looking to save for longer term retirement, the best vehicle for them to look at is the Old Mutual Al Baraka Balance Fund, because that fund complies with the what is called Regulation 28, which is simply the regulatory framework that governs the retirement sort of investment vehicles.
Okay. All right. So another aspect which I think comes from within the Muslim community as well, in terms of Sharia compliance, Sharia investments, is a lot of people out there still equate riba or interest to profit. What did you, not equate, sorry, they still equate interest, or they're saying profit is not, it's different to, or it's the same as interest, sorry, I should say, apologies. Would you agree with that? That is riba or interest the same as profit, or how do you, as a Sharia, can we say, a Sharia expert at Old Mutual, view that sort of statement?
Okay, correction. I'm not a Sharia expert. I'm still a student, very much a student. But as far as the difference between profit and interest, come back to our hypothetical property example. So the property is worth 5 million rand, is what we said. After our due diligence and so on, we decide to buy, and we manage to buy the property for 2 million. After we've done the tender loving care and the other smart money has come in, and over a period of time, that property, we sell it for 6 million. Our profit is 6 minus 2, which is 4 million. So we bought at an attractive price and we sold at a higher price. But equally, despite our best efforts, that price of that property could have gone down to 1.5 million or 1 million. There was some risk attached to it, right? Our capital was at risk. We could have lost something. Interest, on the other hand, is I borrow someone 5 million rand. I then charge them some or other fixed interest rate that essentially says my capital, by and large, is guaranteed. But more than that, my return is also guaranteed. So you can see here there's vast differences between the two. Now Islam permits trading, which is the first example, buying low and selling high. It doesn't permit interest for many reasons, but one of the reasons is this asymmetric risk profile.
No, thank you for clarifying that. Just maybe we've got one or two more questions. What did you tell the young professional when confronted about choosing an investment? Why Sharia is the only option?
Well, telling how to give the young professional
Or anybody,
a few tips. I'd say start saving early.
Okay.
Start saving consistently. As you said, one of your callers or speakers in Johannesburg said, start saving early. Start saving consistently. One of the beautiful themes that comes out of, for example, Surah Yusuf is saving. Did he not save in the years of plenty for the years of drought? So save, start saving. The third thing is you need to have sabr. You must have patience. You must take a long-term view. In this world of Twitterization and highly compressed time frames, we think that also necessarily translates to our wealth creation. We want to have quick and easy shortcuts. Have a long-term plan and stick to the plan. Of course, you can tweak it and recalibrate it as you go along, but have a plan. Be consistent. Take the long-term view. But for Muslim investors, where there is an option, I would strongly urge them to consider Sharia investing, because they have a moral and an ethical obligation as adherents to a particular code to live fully within that code. Not only as far as we eat, but equally as far as we invest as well.
No, shukran for that. Is it true that Islamic or Sharia investment perform well over the long term in terms of 10 to 15 years? Is there evidence behind that?
So, the oldest ethical fund, and the fund that has the longest track record of all the Sharia compliant funds in South Africa, is the Al Mutual Al Baraka Equity Fund. It was launched in June or so 1992 as the Southern Pure Fund. 1992. I don't know where you guys were in. I think I had just graduated from varsity, right? 1992 it started. If you take the performance of the Al Mutual Al Baraka Equity Fund from 1992 up until June 2017, and you compare its performance over that long-term time period, we're talking about, what, 25 years or so, right? Over that long-term time period, it has outperformed most of the general equity funds in South Africa. These are conventional equity funds. Now, does that mean to say that it will necessarily do so over the long term? Not necessarily, but certainly the evidence does show that Sharia compliant investing certainly doesn't necessarily prejudice you over the long term and allows you to earn competitive returns in a manner that is consistent with your Islamic ethos.
Just one final question, Saliegh. How do you and your team ensure or win the trust of the investors? You put your products, you put beautiful brochures, websites are beautiful, invest with the Old Mutual, Al Barakah Fund, etc. How does the investor know that Sharia compliant? What mechanisms? Maybe take us to that sort of the process and the makeup of the board and how the fund is, I think you said vetted earlier.
So, at All Mutual Investment Group, probably one of our most important relationships, in fact the most important relationship that we have, is the relationship that we have with our clients. And that ultimately has got to be founded upon trust. And there are multiple levels and checks and balances that we put in place to not only ensure that that trust is maintained, but also to manage the trust. So when we say something is Sharia compliant, we don't just say take our word for it. We will have an independent Sharia compliance audit by our partner, Al Barakah Bank. We will have an independent verification by KPMG. We will have our Sharia board, who is constituted by a global set of scholars who are leading authorities within their field, certify and vet that we have adhered to the policies as set out by the board. And then we will also fully disclose our holdings to our clients. Because if I can buy a R5 can of Coke, and this Coke will disclose to me exactly what the ingredients are, when I'm making a 500 Rand or 500,000 Rand or R1 million investment, why should I not disclose my holdings? So we disclose our holdings. Transparency is of utmost importance. And the further way that we as Old Mutual Investment Group maintain the trust of our investors is that every single member of our investment team, their money and their wives' money and their kids' money, and hopefully the whole street's money that they live in, their assets are invested alongside our clients' money. So when our clients do well, we do well. When our clients feel the pain or the discomfort, we feel the pain or discomfort. And that is how we generate trust and maintain trust. So that when we sit across the table from a client, we can look them in the eye and we can say, we are as invested as you are, and that this product is Sharia compliant.
Saliegh Salaam, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your insights, your wealth of knowledge. I've no doubt that the viewers will take great benefit and value out of it. I certainly have. I've learned one or two things, alhamdulillah. And lastly, from the team of AccidentalMuslims.com, we make dua that Allah blesses you, your family, your team, will put places barakah and khair in all that you do. And please remember us in your duas as well.
Thank you so much for honoring us with a slot on your fascinating program. We wish you everything of the best with your initiative, and that it grows from strength to strength. And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
To the viewers out there, that was Saliegh Salaam. And we hope you guys have a greater insight, greater knowledge now in terms of what Sharia is, what it is that happens at Sharia and at the Old Mutual Fund. We hope you guys are, again, taking benefit and using this benefit that we can live a life with purpose, inshallah, and actuality. And another thing, don't forget, our conference is coming up on the 30th of September at the Baxter, inshallah. Get your ticket, go to our website, go to our Facebook page. You get all the details there of how you can get your ticket from CompuTicket, Baxter Theatre on the 30th of September 2017. Don't forget to live with purpose. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.